from Urbana. Oh,
Do they want me to? Okay. All right.
that's it. So, yeah, Urbana. Wait a second. So, when was your first time in Urbana? What was the occasion for?
Or Urbana. I don't know the exact first time. I knew. Let's see, that would have been 1958, probably around 1958, 59. I was at the seminar, the Princeton seminars in advanced musical studies. They had two sessions. I think it was 57 and 58 or 58 and 59. There were two summers. And I was at both of them. They invited, I don't know how many, but not too many, maybe 10 or 11 young composers from all over the United States. And they went through some, I don't know how they did it, but it was a very high powered thing. We had, did we talk about that? Because I met Salvatore Martirano there. And so I don't know, he was at both and I was at both. So it was one of those years. I know it was 57, 58 or 58 and 59. And so we became friends, almost all the rest of his life. And so that's when I met him. And he was already at Urbana at that point, I think.
Yeah. No,
Maybe.
I think he was Ledger and Hiller brought him, I think it was 61 or 62. So it was a bit after
Okay, so it led up to that, okay. Yeah. So I don't have those dates in my mind. I remember because of the seminar, that's where I met him, but so it couldn't have been before that. And yeah, we were all just getting out of graduate school, and the whole group of us. And so it must have been somewhere in those early 60s. I don't remember which one, but the first trip I think I took, I don't know the year, but it was to play. I was in let's see, it could have been later even. I remember the trip, but I don't remember the year. Where did I come from? I must have flown in. This must have been later. The first trip I remember, I can't tell you if it's the first time I was. Oh, I'm coming close now.
Mm-hmm.
I came to. Yes, it was 1965, 1966. I left San Francisco.
Okay.
And so this may have not have been the first time, but it's a time. I went to New York. I went to New York in, I think, 1966. And I was an artist in residence at the Tisch School at NYU. And I started I was part of the group that started the Vivian Beaumont Theater in Lincoln Center. I was the music director. And so in that, I went to, I'll tell you what I did. This one I have the dates pretty clear because I was working leading up to that 1965, 1966 for the opening. We were starting with the first production was I can't remember the name of the play, but the music I was doing, I wanted to do an electronic music score for it. Although I was writing also for instruments for those for the evenings. And there was something I wanted to do with a kind of a sequencer that I couldn't quite get going. I was sort of stuck. And Salvatore told me that the engineer at Urbana, we talked about him the last time, had made, I forgot his name, but you remembered his name, had made some sequential device. And so I went out to Urbana at that point. That may have been the first trip, I'm not sure. And it could have been, I'm sorry about this, I'm trying to get that was one trip. And I met with him. What was his name?
James Bosham?
Yeah.
Harmonic tone generator.
Right. That's the harmonic.
He passed away just a year ago.
Oh, too bad. Yeah. Well, but we were all going to do that. But anyway, so that was he had just made it, and so I went out and used it at the studio. Another trip that around the same time, because I came in from. It was around the same time there was a festival, and that had to be a little earlier because I was still playing the clarinet. So the one I just told you about was when I moved to New York, and I gave up the clarinet at that point. So it was probably a year earlier than that, would have been 64, 65, somewhere in that range, just before. And I came out to do the festival that it had, and I played and to see Sal, and they played a big work by Stockhausen that used a bass clarinet, and I played bass clarinet. It was like 12, 13, 14 instruments. I can't remember what it was. So those were two, and I remember, I don't know which time it was. I didn't go to Urbana very often. I mean, it was probably maybe at least two times, and maybe a third time. But I remember the trip. I don't know. I remember a trip that either from the one with Stockhausen, the festival. I was probably still in. I was with Cal Arts at that point. I think I would probably flew out from California. But whenever it was, I had to land in Chicago, wherever I was coming from, and take a plane to Urbana. And the airplane was. It's a very short flight, but the airplane was canvas seats. They weren't regular seats; they were canvas seats. We were strapped in, and we got. I remember very well, and you'll see why. We got to the end of the runway. We sped up, and we got to the end of the runway, and then we suddenly slowed down. And he said, the pilot said over the loudspeaker, he said, "We have to go back. I didn't get enough speed to take off." And we had to go back and try again. And so I've never forgotten that. That was modern times for sure. Anyway, that's really all I remember. It was the festival and the Beauchamp's harmonic generator.
Yeah, I remember there are tapes for you. Mostly those are not digitized because they.
Oh wait, there was one more trip. I think I'm in the right city. There was a composer. I can't remember his name, but he was very esoteric, and he had a group of students, and it wasn't Sal, it was
Herbert Brun, maybe.
Who?
Was it Herbert Brun, the one who was?
Yes. They were called the brunettes. And he needed someone to come in and lecture to them for a week. And I always wanted to see Sal. So I went out, and and they they were really tough. There were 5 or 6 of them, and they asked really complicated questions, but I didn't have any problems. So at about 4 or 5, they were challenging me all the time. And so about 4 or 5 days into it, he said, he walked into the room and he said, I'm going to now ask the questions. They haven't gotten to you far enough. That was very, we actually became friends because we got a lot of those. I thought it was very funny. Pauline Oliveros had done one of those, and she ended up leaving after about 2 days because she couldn't take it. But I didn't expect what I got, but Sal thought it was very funny too. It was quite humorous, and we all sort of laughed at the end of the week about it. But yeah, I remember that too. So that had nothing to do with the festival or what I was doing. It was just a chance to go out to Urbana and spend some time. Probably I could remember another one if we waited long enough, but that's good enough. Does that help you with that?
Yeah, that seems to be a common impression about Herbert Brun. Sal get along with everyone, I think, and well, David, for example, he didn't like Herbert just on the level of ideas.
Yeah, well, he went on. I mean, there were other times that we were together. It wasn't in Urbana, and he was always challenging everyone. And but it was in some ways, it was for the students. I think it was, if they could get through it, it was good. They were difficult, but but it's something to remember. He had a viewpoint. It was a legitimate viewpoint. It just that it seemed like he thought everything should just be the way he thought about it. It was a little, but he would have had he had a harder time than Sal or I had with it, because we were a lot freer about what you should think and what you shouldn't think.
So what was the time when you met David? Was it in 66 or 67 when the Grand Festival took place?
With Stockhausen?
No, I think with Stockhausen, because the festival, it was like it took place each like in 2 years period, so it wasn't yearly. And the one in 67 that is best documented, I think Cage and Xenakis was there. I think with Stockhausen it was 65, and David arrived in fall of
That would make sense, because 65 I hadn't given up the clarinet yet, and so it was probably the earlier one. So what was the other question you have?
Yeah. When you met David in Urbana, I mean, I remember his side of the story, that Sal just prompted him to go and say hi to you, but he didn't indicate what year it was and what was sort of the occasion.
Say this again. I missed what you said.
So David mentioned that you first met in Urbana and that he was encouraged to go and say hi.
Oh, you mean with David? With David, yeah, he was. I don't remember when I met David there. He told me that too, but he just showed up in my studio one day, and that would have been probably 19. Well, it was actually because David took over. Let me take a quick look here. I think I might be able to give you a time. 67. Okay, so it looks like it would have been either 66 or 67 that David came to my studio. he came to New York to my studio. I'd met him in Urbana, but I didn't remember. He
Well, I was going to ask what was your impression of him because he sort of changed quite a bit each year.
Yeah, no, he was. Well, it would have been just, the next year or so that he came. I don't really remember him from Urbana. I know he was a student of Sal's, and when I met him when he came to my studio, he was very smart. He was always very smart. He played the viola, I think, or and he was very well trained, and he had a lot of background because he knew technology, and he also was a musician. In those days, that wasn't the usual thing. It was you were in technology, you were not necessarily a musician, and yeah, so he was smart. And he became an assistant. And everybody came into my studio in New York and became my assistant. I had them do something so they could use things at the studio, but he actually was smart enough to be able to do a number of things. And we had just we were just getting started with the electric circus, and he became involved in that.
Back to Urbana, did you have
about that, but I don't want to interrupt the questions.
Back to Urbana, did you have a chance to participate in or just attend the Roundhouse concerts? Those were organized by Sal Martirano.
I'll say it again.
Did you have a chance to attend or participate in the Roundhouse concert series, the one that was arranged by Sal Martirano? I can give a bit of detail.
Oh, the Roundhouse, Roundhouse. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a nice Roundhouse. I didn't go to I don't think I went to any of the concerts he did there. I mean, I was just always there for 3 or 4 or 5 days. I did go to the house, and we had dinner together.
Oh, nice.
I met his wife at that time. He had a different wife later, but the wife he had, I think she was Italian. I can't remember.
Yes, I'm always blanking on her name, but I think she either did the costumes or something like that. I met her name in the records, but he got along with Dorothy pretty soon in '60s, with Dorothy Martirano in his
Right. He was still married to his wife when I first met him, and at the Roundhouse they were living there together. I do remember that, but I don't think I went to any concerts there.
Okay.
Not that I remember anyway.
Yeah. Well, the Roundhouse or Garvey House, it still exists, but it's in private ownership, and it looks like a spaceship. It's sort of a caricature.
Well, I thought they lived there.
I think. I mean, I'm not quite sure, but
No, I ate with them there. I don't know whether. I mean, I always thought that was their house.
I remember David when he came in late '60s for the summer series. They were living somewhere else in Urbana, but by that time he was he was with Dorothy, so maybe it's something that was
connected. Yeah, he wasn't with Dorothy when I don't have a strong. I wouldn't have remembered the Roundhouse. I remember it now, but just I remember there was a round building that I thought he was living in, but maybe I was wrong.
Yeah. I don't know if it's of interest. I just put in the chat the photo of David, of Gordon Binkert, and Sulima Stravinsky, and probably that's the way David looked when you first met him in Urbana, close to it.
Yeah. Say that again.
In the chat, I put the photo of David with Sulima Stravinsky and Gordon Binkert. or I can actually open it and share the screen to show it. Just for the memory. Okay. Share screen. Okay. That's, oops. I don't know how well it's.
Yeah, there's David.
Yeah, that's probably the way he looked when you first met him, because
Yeah, right.
he's 65, and here is Suleiman Stravinsky and Gordon Binkard, his first advisor before he shifted to SOT.
Yeah, what do you want? I don't think I met them, so did you have a question about that?
No, just for the sort of recollection, I don't know. That's probably the way he looked when you first met him back in Urbana.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can even recognize him from that photo. There's something about his mouth that is very unique, I remember his mouth always, so he can change the rest of his thing, but when he smiles or talks, I can still remember what he looks like.
Nice.
Anyway.
Yeah. How would you define the Urbana School? What was its reputation out there back in those days?
Oh, Urbana had a wonderful reputation. It was there was also this is very vague for me, but they had a program, a computer program. They were working, with a heavy computing, and they were doing visual art, and I think I even used something that somebody was using, because they did something for me at it. I had a student from Cal Arts who had gone there, and a painter who had been a student of mine, and worked at that. It was an institute, or I'm not quite sure, but it was something like what we were trying to do, with the See It. Yeah, they had a wonderful reputation in those days. Very hard to get there. The plane didn't go fast enough, but it was. I always found that wasn't that where composer, his wife, never left the house because she had some kind of phobia, and always what was his name? He wrote a bunch of string quartets, I think. Anyway, they had a very diverse faculty and very smart. I just was very impressed with Urbana. It was like, and because it was not just smart like you get at universities anyway, but it was really trying to make advanced stuff. They were really working with technology in a very meaningful way, and it had that reputation as well.
So was it like more or less of the Columbia Princeton sort of, were they compatible, the EMS?
No, they weren't anything like, it wasn't anything like, except for Herbert Brun, but it wasn't anything like Princeton and Columbia. It had a completely different feeling to it. It was, I can't describe it, but it didn't. Columbia and Princeton were very, very strongly academic, and they were there. It would be as if Herbert Brun had run the university. The Columbia was more open, but Princeton, in terms of the music, was really caught, and Columbia became caught too, and with with an absolute the feeling that they knew the answer to everything, and they became, in many ways, Columbia and Princeton, especially Princeton, became sort of no, I shouldn't say that, especially Columbia. Princeton had a light side. Columbia didn't. I mean, there were people at Columbia who were also very open and more like Urbana. But Urbana had the feeling of people who were, they're not trying to prove anything, but and control anything. They were very open to research and all kinds of activity. You never would have found Stockhausen in either Columbia or prison or Princeton. He was an outlawed from all these places in those days. That's why I said if Brun ran Columbia or Princeton, it would make more sense than just being a person at Urbana. You know, he had that kind of absolute knowledge that what he was doing was the right thing. That just seems funny to me, even today, even more so today, but even then, at that point.
Whom of EMS experimental music studios affiliated composers you've got to know well on the personal level other than Salvatore Martirano?
From Urbana?
Yes.
Well, it's this other composer I'm thinking about.
I can bring up some names if it will help recollection. So we already talked about Herbert Brun, Salvatore Martirano. I've mentioned Ledger and Hiller, of course. Ben Johnston.
Ben Johnston, that's the person, and he became he wasn't a close friend like Sal, but we got together. We had a good time together. He commissioned a work, and I probably premiered it at Urbana. I've forgotten about that until now. That would have been. You can tell me if this could be right. That would have been much later. How did he stay there a long time?
I think he left in late 60s. There was a kind of exodus, whatever, many composers left.
Then it was somewhere else, where maybe I didn't even know him in Urbana, but I did get to know him, and he was invited to. We had in Los Angeles, that would be when I was at Cal Arts. So that would have been earlier. That may have been when he was still at Urbana. But he had a performance at the Monday evening concerts in Los Angeles. And of course I came and we had dinner together and everything. But when he came up to the Monday evening concerts in their original form did earlier music than new music, but pieces of music that were of special interest that were in some way, and then they would do new music. And later it became only new music, but this was one of those. And so they did a piece by Haydn that was, like Mozart had written things with chants in it and things like that. So there was something by Haydn that he'd done in a special way. I don't know what it was. And when the audience applauded, Ben got up and went to the front and bowed and said he took the bow for Haydn. It was sort of really strange, but very funny. He was a very funny man. Very funny and very strange sense of humor, which was very nice. And he was conducting a chamber orchestra somewhere. I don't know, wherever he was later. It wasn't at that time. And he commissioned a work for me, and that would have been around 1984. I don't know where he was at that point, but the concert was in a cathedral, I remember.
Mhm.
And was writing, I had a new program, I mentioned this, I think, to you, of the Interactor,
Mhm.
and we were just finishing Interactor, and so it was a piece for chamber orchestra. Oh, yeah, and that was the use of